Hello, everyone. This is Reverend Dr. Roger Paul. And tonight, we're going to study paper 176, Tuesday evening on the Mount of Olivet. And that starts on page 1912. And that's paper 176 in the original book. Let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight. We might study this wonderful revelation, and pray that you'll be with us tonight. And we'll open our hearts and minds that we might learn something and share it with others, and that we might do your will more fully in our lives. And we thank you for the opportunity to do this, and we thank you for the opportunity to learn. We say this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay. If I can get this working here. I guess it would help if I turned it off. 1 second, y'all. I have to do this every time I turn this on. It takes it a minute. Okay. Paper 176, Tuesday evening on the Mount of Olivet. This Tuesday afternoon, as Jesus and the apostles passed out of the temple on their way to the Gethsemane camp, Matthew called attention to the temple construction, said, "Master, observe what manner of buildings these are. See these massive stones and beautiful ornament? Can it be that these buildings are to be destroyed?" As they went on toward Olivet, Jesus said, "You see these stones and this massive temple? Verily, verily, I say to you, in the days soon to come, there shall not be left one stone upon another. They shall all be thrown down." These remarks depicting the destruction of the sacred temple aroused the curiosity of the apostles as they walked along behind the Master. They could conceive of no event short of the end of the world which would occasion the destruction of the temple. And it was the temple in which not a stone was left on top of one another. You know, there's still the Wailing Wall, but that's not what Jesus was talking about. He was talking about the temple itself, right? Mm-hmm. All right. And losing my mind here. Yeah, we'll find it again. Okay. Dear, will you take the next one?
In order to avoid the crowds passing along the Kindred Valley towards Gethsemane, Jesus and his associates were minded to climb up the western slope of Olivet for a short distance and then follow a trail over to their private camp near Gethsemane, located a short distance above the public camping ground. As they turned to leave the road leading on to Bethany, they observed the temple, glorified by the rays of the setting sun. And while they tarried on the mount, they saw the lights of the city appear and beheld the beauty of the illuminated temple. And there, under the mellow light of the full moon, Jesus and the 12 sat down. The Master talked with them, and presently Nathanael asked this question, "Tell us, Master, how shall we know when these events are about to come to pass?"
Stephen, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. The destruction of Jerusalem. Let me get this. Okay. In answering Nathanael's question, Jesus said, "Yes, I will tell you about the times when the people shall have filled up the cup of their iniquity, when justice shall swiftly descend upon this city of our fathers. I am about to leave you. I go to the Father. After I leave you, take heed that no man deceive you. For many will come as deliverers and will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, be not troubled. For though all these things will happen, the end of Jerusalem is not yet at hand. You should not be perturbed by famines or earthquakes, neither should you be concerned when you are delivered up to the civil authorities and are persecuted for the sake of the gospel. You will be thrown out of the synagogue and put in prison for my sake, and some of you will be killed. when you're brought up before governors and rulers, it shall be for the testimony of your faith, and to show your steadfastness in the gospel of the kingdom. And when you stand before judges, be not anxious beforehand as to what you should say, for the Spirit will teach you in that very hour what you should answer your adversaries. In these days of travail, even your own kinsfolk, under the leadership of those who have rejected the Son of Man, will deliver you up to prison and death. For a time you may be hated by all men for my sake, but even in these persecutions I will not forsake you. My Spirit will not desert you. Be patient, doubt not. This is the gospel of the kingdom. Will triumph over all enemies and eventually be proclaimed to all nations.
Okay, I want to bring up a point at the very beginning of this, that many people misinterpret from the New Testament. And it's when he talks about that there will be many false prophets, you know what I'm saying here? And he's talking about people that will try to lead Israel and lead the Christians both, that are false prophet. And he says here that they will come as deliverers and will lead many astray. So there's going to be lots of factions that came up between his death and the destruction of Jerusalem. He's not talking about way into the future, you know, where, you know, in the in the New Testament, we're always taking this, that this is far into the future and there'll be this Antichrist that comes up and causes all of this. That's not what he's saying here. He's saying these false deliverers will come to Jerusalem and come to the people of Jerusalem before the destruction. Okay? And I want to make sure I point that out and make it clear, because you could take that as there's going to be lots and lots of people came from since the time of Christ up till now that are false teachers that's going to lead people astray. That may be true, but that's not what Jesus is talking about here. Okay? That's exactly right. What he's talking about here is those that will lead people astray up until the destruction of Jerusalem, right? Because we've always had false teachers, haven't we? I mean, since the beginning of time. And we're going to continue to have false teachers till the end, well, not to the end of time, till the light and life, right? There's always going to be somebody cropping up that says that they know all the answers and they're prophets and all this sort of thing. So we have to be very selective in who we believe and what their message is, right? Okay. And I wanted to point that out in this very first paragraph because I think it's very, very important. The other thing is him talking about what are we concerned if basically if we are thrown into jails by the civil authorities or even killed, because our future is in what? The mansion worlds. It's not in the present time. So we have to let loose of this idea of trying to save our own life, right? Because we've already been saved through the life of Christ. All right. Bill, would you take the next one?
Sure. Jesus paused while he looked down upon the city. The master realized that the rejection of the spiritual concept of the Messiah, the determination to cling persistently and blindly to the material mission of the expected deliverer, would presently bring the Jews in direct conflict with the powerful Roman army, and that such a contest could only result in the final and complete overthrow of the Jewish nation. When his people rejected his spiritual bestowal and refused to receive the light of heaven as it so mercifully shone upon them, they thereby sealed their doom as an independent people with a special spiritual mission on earth. Even the Jewish leaders subsequently recognized that it was this secular idea of the Messiah which directly led to the turbulence which eventually brought about their destruction.
So,
this reminds me of something. If you remember back when Jesus was a young man, they tried to enlist him in the nationalist army against Rome.
Yes, the zealots. Right. Yeah, they sure did, and he refused to participate. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He refused to participate, and he stood fast that his mission was not to be in that.
Right. Right. And that was a big struggle for him because you know, the so many of the local people of Nazareth turned against him just because of that one thing, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
even his mother wanted him to be in that too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The other thing about this particular paragraph is the fact that the spiritual mission of the Jewish nation ended here with the death of Christ, right? So them being a chosen nation for the deliverance of the message of God ended because of this rejection of him, right? And he was right. Soon after his death, you know, within 40 years, Rome did come in and wipe out the entire, everyone in Jerusalem and the entire Jewish nation, right? And that's it.
Right.
Basically, their self-righteousness and their materialistic goals is what stopped them from even seeing the spiritual mission that Jesus brought to them.
Right, right.
Right.
And it, you know, I want to bring another point up in our materialistic concepts today. It would be easy for us to go the same direction if you think about it, because we're very material minded in this generation, right? We've almost lost sight of our spiritual heritage. All right. Okay. Since Jerusalem was to become the cradle of the early gospel movement, Jesus did not want his teachers and preachers to perish in the terrible overthrow of the Jewish people in connection with the destruction of Jerusalem. Therefore, did he give these instructions to his followers. Jesus was much concerned lest some of his disciples become involved in these soon coming revolts and so perish in the downfall of Jerusalem. Okay, some of these revolts he's talking about are these false teachers that caused this, right? Including the zealot. All right.
And that's exactly what the one who walked away wanted him to get into.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what they did. All right, dude, you want to take the next one?
Then Andrew inquired, "But Master, if the holy city and the temple are not to be if the holy city and the temple are to be destroyed, and if you are not here to direct us, when should we forsake Jerusalem?" Said Jesus, "You may remain in the city after I have gone, even though these times of travail and other bitter persecution. But when you finally see Jerusalem being encompassed by the Roman armies after the revolt of the false prophets, then will you know that her desolation is at hand. Then must you flee to the mountains. Let none who are in the city and around about tarry to save aught, neither let those who are outside dare to enter therein. There will be great tribulation, and these will be the days of Gentile vengeance. And after you have deserted the city, this disobedient people will fall by the edge of the sword, and will be led captive into all nations, and so shall Jerusalem be trodden down by the Gentiles. In the meantime, I warn you, be not deceived. If any man comes to you saying, 'Behold, here is the deliverer,' or 'Behold, there he is,' believe it not. For many false teachers will arise, and many will be led astray. But you should not be deceived, for I have told you all this beforehand."
And all this happened, didn't it? Okay, and Jerusalem was seized not only by the Romans, but many other times too, you know. And Jesus told about this right here to the apostles this night. All right. Stephen, would you take the next one?
Okay. The apostles sat in silence in the moonlight for a considerable time while these astounding predictions of the Master sank into their bewildered minds. And it was in conformity with this very warning that practically the entire group of believers and disciples fled from Jerusalem upon the first appearance of the Roman troops, finding a safe shelter in Pella to the north.
All right. So many of the Christian believers believed him, didn't they? And this is a ruins of the Roman camp at the base of Masada. That was interesting. Okay. Bill, could you take the next one, please?
Okay. Even after this explicit warning, many of Jesus' followers interpreted these predictions as referring to the changes which would obviously occur in Jerusalem when the reappearing of the Messiah would result in the establishment of the new Jerusalem and in the enlargement of the city to become the world's capital. In their minds, these Jews were determined to connect the destruction of the temple with the end of the world. They believed this new Jerusalem would fill all Palestine, that the end of the world would be followed by the immediate appearance of the new heaven and the new earth. And so it was not strange that Peter should say, Master, we know that all things will pass away when the new heavens and the new earth appear. But how shall we know when you will return to bring all this about?
Okay, now, the new heavens and new earth, you know, the destruction of the world, the end of the world. This is where the end of the world concept came from, right? And Jesus never said one time that the world would end. He did say, what would it matter if the world would end? Because you are sons and daughters of the living God, right? So if the world was to end, you'd automatically go where? To the first world, right?
To the mansion world. Right.
That's right. So what happens to this world is of no consequence if you're a believer, right? And that's what he's talking about. Now, that concept got reinvented even in the early 70s. I remember reading things like Revelations visualized and all these end of the world scenarios that supposedly came from what? The book of Revelation and this type of documentation, right? So that's where all this end of the world stuff started, and people still believe that the world's going to come to an end. Okay? And I'm here to tell you, listen to me in 1,000 years from now, I'm telling you the world is not coming to an end. Okay? We will reach light and life. Jesus has said we'll do that. Okay? When we reach light and life, the Mirage Temple will descend from heaven. In other words, the Mirage Temple will appear to us and we'll be able to see it. Okay? As far as we know, it's Mirage material. It could already be here. Right? We just cannot see it. Okay? The point is, when we get closer to light and life, we will have spiritual sight, spiritual insight to things like the Mirage Temple. Right? Also, we're going to talk about the second coming of Christ. He may come back 12 times, but during that descension of the Mirage Temple, normally the Son of God appears with the temple to dedicate it. Okay? So when that happens, more than likely, we will see Jesus then. But we won't be here, unfortunately, probably. You know?
Right.
It's probably eons into the future. Okay, who's up? I think, Stephen, did you just read?
No, Bill did.
Bill did? Okay, well, I'm up then. When Jesus heard this, he was thoughtful for some time and then said, "You err since you always try to attach the new teachings to the old. You are determined to misunderstand all my teachings. You insist on interpreting the gospel in accordance with your established beliefs. Nevertheless, I will try to enlighten you." Okay? We're in the same situation today.
Well, one of the things we got here, and I mean, this is what he's speaking of. If you go back to the other chapter, we're sitting here again asking him, what is going to happen? What are we going to see? When are we going to know? And to walk in the Spirit was yesterday. It was 2,000 years ago. This is something we should have already accomplished, And it is our disobedience to what he has been teaching us that is creating this problem.
It is.
We're still stuck in this. We're waiting. There's no waiting. He's been here. He's delivered us. It's time to find out what we need to do.
Right. The kingdom is now. Right, Stephen? It is.
Yes, it is.
It is now. It's within us. Right? So there's nothing to wait for. The only thing we have to wait for is death. Right? We're all going to die. I mean, that's the way it is. But what we're waiting for is our new Mirantia spiritual selves, and being able to build our Mirantia moda. But what Stephen is talking about here is we should have already come into a spiritual age before now. But it's our own indolence and our own materialistic concept that has kept us from doing that, right? And it's still going on. And I love this last sentence. Nevertheless, I will try to enlighten you. What are we doing with this book?
We're being enlightened.
Nevertheless, we are trying to enlighten you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
That's what it's about. All right. Let's keep going here.
2. The Master's second coming. On several occasions, Jesus had made statements which led his hearers to infer that, while he intended presently to leave this world, he would most certainly return to consummate the work of the heavenly kingdom. As the conviction grew on his followers that he was going to leave them, and after he had departed from this world, it was only natural for all believers to lay fast hold upon these promises to return. The doctrine of the second coming of Christ thus became early incorporated into the teachings of the Christians, and almost every subsequent generation of disciples has devoutly believed this truth and has confidently looked forward to his sometime coming.
Okay, they also believe in the end of the world too, though, don't they? All right, and they put the two together, which have nothing to do with one another. Okay, Stephen, would you take the next one?
Okay. If they were to part with their master and teacher, how much more did these first disciples and the apostles grasp at the promise to return? And they lost no time in associating the predicted destruction of Jerusalem with this promised second coming. And they continued thus to interpret his words, notwithstanding that throughout this evening of instruction on Mount Olivet, the master took particular pains to prevent just such a mistake.
So he tried to tell them that was not the case. And this is a picture of Jerusalem. That's the old-time Jerusalem. That's the one out on the front screen. And this is from the Vatican. All right. Bill, would you take the next one?
Okay. In further answer to Peter's question, Jesus said, "Why do you still look for the Son of Man to sit upon the throne of David and expect that the material dreams of the Jews will be fulfilled? Have I not told you all these years that my kingdom is not of this world? The things which you now look down upon are coming to an end. But this will be a new beginning, out of which the gospel of the kingdom will go to all the world, and this salvation will spread to all peoples. And when the kingdom shall have come to its full fruition, be assured that the Father in heaven will not fail to visit you with an enlarged revelation of truth and enhanced demonstration of righteousness, even as he has already bestowed upon this world him who became the prince of darkness, and then Adam, who was followed by Melchizedek, and in these days the Son of Man. And so will my Father continue to manifest his mercy and show forth his love, even to this dark and evil world. So also will I, after my Father has invested me with all power and authority, continue to follow your fortunes and to guide in the affairs of the kingdom by the presence of my Spirit, who shall shortly be poured out upon all flesh. Even though I shall thus be present with you in spirit, I also promise that I will sometime return to this world where I have lived this life in the flesh and achieved the experience of simultaneously revealing God to man and leading man to God. Very soon must I leave you and take up the work the Father has entrusted to my hand. But be of good courage, for I will sometime return. In the meantime, my Spirit of the truth of a universe shall comfort and guide you.
Okay. The first four previous revelations are in this paragraph, aren't they? Right?
That's right.
Guess what else is there? The fifth epochal revelation.
Exactly.
The information of this advanced revelation for man and the enlarged revelation of truth and the enhanced demonstration of righteousness. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this tells us not only about the Spirit of truth coming at Pentecost, but it also tells us about the first four revelations and the fifth revelation to come, which came in our time. Right?
Right.
How much plain can you be than that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'm going to have to see if I can find that in the Bible and learn to point that out to people.
I don't believe it's there, Bill. I could be wrong. You might make me wrong on that, but I don't believe that is in the Bible about the revelation.
It may not be. It may not be because, you know, they edited a lot of stuff out.
Yeah, that's true. And the other part is, Bill, they would probably call it the Book of Revelations, right? Because they would associate that revelation with the Book of Revelations, right?
Right.
From the Bible. So, anyway, all right. You behold me now in weakness and in flesh, but when I return, it shall be with power and in spirit. In the eyes of the flesh behold the Son of Man in flesh, but only the eye of the Spirit will behold the Son of Man glorified by the Father and appearing on earth in his own name. Okay, let me clarify another discrepancy that we think about Jesus. We always believe that Jesus will come back in power and glory, right?
Mm-hmm.
He will, but it'll be spiritual power and spiritual glory. He will come back as the sovereign of the universe, right? That's the power. He will come back in glory because he will be of his spirit form, in his glorified spirit form. So do you think he will come back with, people think power and glory, that he will come out of the sky and all the sky will open up and we'll all see him at the same time, right? I mean, that's what Revelations people believe, yeah? Right. I'm telling you it may not be that way at all. He will come back in power and glory, and only those who have spiritual vision will see him, but all mankind will see him. Okay? So what does that mean to us? That means that probably when he comes back and reveals himself to all mankind, it will be when? When we reach light and life. Because in light and life, what do people have? They have spiritual sight, spiritual insight. Right. So we will see him because we will all be of the spiritual mindset. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm talking about with the power and the spirit, or the power and the glory. Now, we have been taught down through the ages the Book of Revelation concept of he will open it, the sky will split open, and we'll see millions of angels coming down with him, and we'll see him coming down in a robe, flying through the air, right? I mean, that's what we expect. That's what we've been taught, right? And I'm telling you that's probably not the way it'll be, you know?
Hey, Millie.
Okay. Hey, Millie.
Hey, Millie.
And he does this. One other thing I want to mention before I change this slide is the Son of Man will be glorified by the Father and appearing on earth in his own name. So when he comes, he will clarify that he is the sovereign of this planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
There'll be no doubt about it. All right, let's keep going. I think you're up next.
Okay. But the times of the reappearing of the Son of Man are known only in the councils of paradise. Not even the angels of heaven know when this will occur. However, you should understand that when the gospel of the kingdom shall have been proclaimed to all the world for the salvation of all peoples, and when the fullness of the age has come to pass, the Father will send you another dispensational bestowal, or else the Son of Man will return to adjudge the age.
Okay, so what's he talking about here? This dispensational bestowal.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we're expecting, right? The Magisterial Son, and then eventually the Teacher Sons, right? So this is the way it's done in the universe. So that's what he's telling us about. When the fullness of the ages have come to pass, when we have become more spiritual, right? And when we become more ready, another bestowal son will come to us, right? And that will probably be the Magisterial Son first. And then after that, when we get even more spiritual and closer to the ages of light and life, then we'll get what? A Trinity Teacher Son, or a set of Trinity Teacher Sons, okay, to prepare us for the age of light and life in the future.
Boy, we got a long way to go.
Well,
What was it?
Bill said we have a long way to go.
We have a
We're not
long
gonna
way to
be
go,
here,
unfortunately. Yeah. May I turn this on? I must have turned it off. There we go. Can't get anything to move here. Let's try this again. What slide's that on there, dear? 2.6?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Stephen, would you take the next one?
Okay. And now concerning the travail of Jerusalem, about which I have spoken to you, even this generation will not pass away until my words are fulfilled. But concerning the times of the coming again of the Son of Man, no one in heaven or on earth may presume to speak. But you should be wise regarding the ripening of an age. You should be alert to discern the signs of the times. You know when the fig tree shows its tender branches and puts forth its leaves, that summer is near. Likewise, when the world has passed through the long winter of material mindedness, and you discern the coming of the spiritual springtime of a new dispensation, should you know that the summertime of a new visitation draws near.
Okay, two things. The beginning of the sentence, he says that these things shall come to pass. What's he talking about? He's talking about all those things he predicted up to the destruction of Jerusalem, including the false prophets, including the false teachers, including being led astray, right? These things will come to pass before the destruction of Jerusalem. And then after this destruction of Jerusalem, he goes on and talks about the material mind, the long winter of material mindedness. How would you describe our current situation in the world?
Material mind?
Yeah, the long winter of material mindedness. Think about it, right? So we should be looking for a new coming of a spiritual springtime, an awakening of the spiritual world, right? And what is part of that awakening of the spiritual world? The fifth epochal revelation, right? Preparing teachers, preparing people to share so that they're aware of this new spiritual world to come and prepare us for light and life. And then we will be ready for the summertime of a new visitation. And what will that new visitation be? Probably a Magisterial Son or a Trinity Teacher Son, right?
Okay, well, in this spiritual springtime, what we should be looking for is a revelation of truth. And how do we know a truth? It brings you closer to God than what you were before.
That's,
so I mean,
yeah,
it's going to actually change the way you feel about God. So
yeah.
they say, you know, be awake to this. Don't stick to your old habits and traditions. When somebody brings a message that helps you to understand God, this is a direction that you're trying to move to at this point.
That's exactly right, Stephen. And that's what this revelation helps you do. It helps you open your mind, open your concept, and prepare you for listening to the voice of God, which is the thought adjuster, right?
Yes.
Right.
All right. That changed. Well, that didn't change again, did it? This battery must be.
It's supposed to be 270.
Huh?
It's supposed to be on
Yeah,
270.
hang on, dear. I'm not on here or something. There we go.
We do that batteries.
I'm not sure. It just stopped working. Let me get this out there and see if I can just get it to click over. Okay. Bill, would you take the next one, please?
Sure. But what is the significance of this teaching having to do with the coming of the sons of God? Do you not perceive that when each of you is called to lay down his life struggle and pass through the portal of death, you stand in the immediate presence of judgment, and that you are face to face with the facts of a new dispensation of service in the eternal plan of the infinite Father? What the whole world must face as a literal fact at the end of an age, you, as individuals, but each most certainly face as a personal experience when you reach the end of your natural life, and thereby pass on to be confronted with the conditions and demands inherent in the next revelation of the eternal progression of the Father's kingdom.
What is he talking about there? He's talking about waking up on the mansion worlds, isn't he? He's talking about waking up and with the realization you are in a new dispensation of service for God, right? By just passing on to the mansion worlds, right? We're sons of God. And when we get there, our goal is what? To become real sons of God by fusing with the adjuster. And we will realize that as soon as we get there. We gain that experience, right? And that's just...
I was just discussing this thing today with a person on the phone and telling her that, you know, we go through an eternal path of sanctification.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you know, to follow God's will for us, to be holy as I am holy, be perfect as I am perfect. That's
right. That's true. That's true. And this is part of that progress, right? That step-by-step progress, right? It's interesting, he says here, and thereby pass on to be confronted with the conditions and demands inherent in the next revelation of the eternal progression of the Father's kingdom. So when we wake up, we're confronted with new demands and new conditions that are not the same as this world. New bodies, a whole new situation. New living quarters. New living.
Now, I see this as something that we can go through right now in this life.
We can.
To let go of your life struggle.
Yes.
And now you enter into the spiritual call. You know, in other words, we're called to do this. We're told, let go of this material universe and start serving the Father. Okay, that brings you into an immediate judgment, and you stand face to face with the facts of, I mean, to walk in the Spirit in this planet right here, right now, is totally different than anything you've ever done.
Yeah.
So this plan, it's gonna take you just to a whole different aspect of your relationship with God. And he's going to bring this up here in a few more paragraphs, so we'll go into it a little deeper then.
But to do that, Stephen, we have to give up the old life, right? We have to give in to the new life, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. This is next. Okay. Bill just read. Bill, did you just read?
Yes.
Yeah, I just read.
Okay, Millie, would you take this one?
Yes. Of all the discourses which the Master gave his apostles, none ever became so confused in their minds as this one, given this Tuesday evening on the Mount of Olives, regarding the twofold subject of the destruction of Jerusalem and his own second coming. There was, therefore, little agreement between the subsequent written accounts based on the memories of what the Master said on this extraordinary occasion. Consequently, when the records were left blank concerning much that was said that Tuesday evening, there grew up many traditions, and very early in the 2nd century, a Jewish apocalyptic about the Messiah, written by one Stella, who was attached to the court of the Emperor Caligula, was bodily copied into the Matthew Gospel and subsequently added, in part, to the Mark and Luke records. It was in these writings that that the parable of the 10 virgins appeared. No part of the gospel ever suffered such a confusing misconstruction as this evening's teachings, but the Apostle John never became thus confused.
Okay, so you will not find the parable of the 10 virgins in the Urantia Book. Okay, just to let y'all know. That's because Celta entered the parable of the 10 virgins in the Gospels himself or herself. I don't know which it is. It doesn't say, right? But that was someone that was attached to the court of the Emperor of Caligula. So there was a reason they added that into the 3 Gospels, right? And there was a reason they added in the parable of the 10 virgins, and I'll let y'all look that up for yourselves. But that is not one of Jesus's parables. Just want to let you know. It did get written down in the New Testament. It's just one of the many things in the New Testament that really was attributed to Jesus that he didn't do or say, right? All right.
It says that it was written by one Celta, who was attached to the court of the Emperor Caligula.
Right. Do y'all remember anything about Caligula?
Caligula was one evil emperor.
He was one evil emperor, that's right. He had no morals whatsoever. And he ended up being killed by one of his own people, right? But during his reign, orgies was common in the emperor's courts, constantly going on, right? They had no morals about anything, including death and sex and all those other things, right? And it's kind of interesting that Celta is from his court who entered this into the Gospels, and it makes you wonder, what was the motive for this, right? In this picture of the adoration of Christ after the crucifixion. Let me see if I can pass this one. Okay. All of the discourses of all the discourses, fumble tongue this morning, tonight, which the Master gave his apostles, none ever became so confused in the minds as this one, given this Tuesday evening on the Mount of Olives, regarding the twofold subject of the destruction of Jerusalem and his second coming. There was, therefore...
Did you just read that?
I just read that.
Oh, is this the?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I went backwards here, y'all.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get the next one.
It's good to hear it again.
Yeah. I'm crazy, y'all, tonight. Y'all just excuse me. Okay, as these 13 men resumed their journey toward the camp, they were speechless and under great emotional tension. Judas had finally confirmed his decision to abandon his associates, as was a late hour when David Zebedee, John Mark, and a number of the leading disciples welcomed Jesus and the 12 to the new camp. But the apostles did not want to sleep. They wanted to know more about the destruction of Jerusalem, the Master's departure, and the end of the world. Okay, notice how they stuck all that together, too. All right. Well, I messed up again.
It's supposed to be 3-1.
Yeah, I went too far. Let me see if I can get this to come back on. I'm going to have to go back with one. I don't know what's wrong with this thing. Well, excuse me again, y'all. I'm going to have to go around here to get this to work because I can't see it from there. Okay.
3. Later discussion at the camp. As they gathered about the campfire, some 20 of them, Thomas asked, "Since you are to return to finish the work of the kingdom, what should be our attitude while you are away on the Father's business?" As Jesus looked them over by the firelight, he answered.
All right. Did I just kill it?
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, y'all. I'm having clicker trouble issues tonight. Come on. Okay.
Mine didn't turn in.
Okay. Stephen, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. And even you, Thomas, fail to comprehend what I have been saying. Have I not all this time taught you that your connection with the kingdom is spiritual and individual, wholly a matter of personal experience in the Spirit by the faith realization that you are the Son of God? Now, this again is where he's saying you've laid down your life struggle and now you realize you're the Son of God and you're starting to become obedient to Jesus. What more shall I say? The downfall of nations, the crash of empires, the destructions of the unbelieving Jews, the end of the age, even the end of the world. What are these things to do with one who believes this gospel and who has hid his life in the surety of the eternal kingdom? You who are God-knowing and gospel-believing have already received the assurance of eternal life, since your lives have been lived in the Spirit and for the Father. Nothing can be of serious concern to you. Kingdom builders, the accredited citizens of the heavenly worlds, are now to be disturbed by temporal upheavals and perturbed by terrestrial cataclysm. What does it matter to you who believe this gospel of the kingdom if nations overturn, the age ends, or all things visible crash, since you know that your life is the gift of the Son, and that it is eternally secure in the Father? Having lived the temporal life by faith, and having yielded the fruits of the Spirit as the righteousness of loving service for your fellows, you can confidently look forward to the next step in the eternal career with the same survival faith that has carried you through your first and earthly adventure in the sonship with God.
Okay, so he's telling them, what does it matter what happens to this world? You're faced sons of God, right? You're going to paradise on a journey, right? You're going to the mansion worlds and you're on the right path. What does it matter if the whole world falls apart, right? This is dead here. All right, let's see if I'm on the right one here.
You are. It's 3:3.
Okay. All right. All right, Bill, would you take the next one?
Sure. Each generation of believers should carry on their work in view of the possible return of the Son of Man, exactly as each individual believer carries forward his life work in view of the inevitable and ever-impending natural death. When you have by faith once established yourself as a son of God, nothing else matters as regards to surety of survival. But make no mistake, this survival faith is a living faith, and it increasingly manifests the fruits of that divine spirit which first inspired it in the human heart. That you have once accepted sonship in the heavenly kingdom will not save you in the face of the knowing and persistent rejection of those truths which have to do with the progressive spiritual fruit bearing of the sons of God in the flesh. You who have been with me in the Father's business on earth can even now desert the kingdom if you find that you love not the way of the Father's service for mankind.
So you can turn away from God even after you have started following, right?
Okay, I've got something on this too that's just happened recently that hopefully this will kind of explain this. But we've got obedience to Jesus, and then we've got the desire for self.
Yeah.
And so my sister sent her husband out to get her some potatoes and gravy last night. And she just wanted 2 little things because she's not eating anything.
Yeah.
Well, he back with 2 quarts, and she got real upset about this, oh, well, why are you doing this? And then, of course, he got said, well, you didn't make yourself clear, and so on, So he left, and I said, next time something like that happens, just say thank you and ask him to dish you up a little plate.
Yeah.
And then she got really hostile with me. Well, that should have never happened. Blah, 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 blah. It's these little things like that. Where is the humble? Where is the mercy, the forgiveness? Why are we always challenging everything? Why aren't we backing down and doing like Christ is teaching us to do?
Yeah. Good point, Stephen.
Okay.
All right. Let's see if I can keep on
Yeah,
here.
it's going to be hard.
Oh, what happened that time?
I know, but the print is very, very tiny.
That's all right, dear. Let's go on.
Which one is it? 'Cause I can't-
Millie, would you go ahead and start reading this? Let me see what happened tomorrow. I think I just killed the overhead here. I'll have to bring it back up. Y'all go ahead.
Having a hard time, sorry.
It's not been a good day.
You ready?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to bring this back up in another way here.
As individuals and as a generation of believers, hear me while I speak a parable. There was a certain great man who, before starting out on a long journey to another country, called all of his trusted servants before him and delivered unto their hands all his goods. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, and so on down through the entire group of honored stewards. To each he entrusted his goods according to their several abilities. And then he set out on his journey. When the Lord had departed, his servants set themselves at work to gain profits from the wealth entrusted to them. Immediately he who had received 5 talents began to trade with them, and very soon had made a profit of another 5 talents. In like manner, he who had received 2 talents soon gained 2 more. And so did all the servants make gains for their master, except the one who received but 1 talent. He went away by himself and dug a hole in the earth where he had hid his Lord's money. Presently the Lord of those servants unexpectedly returned and called upon his stewards for a reckoning. And when they had all been called before the master, he who had received the 5 talents came forward with the money which he had been entrusted to him, and brought 5 additional talents, saying, Lord, you gave me 5 talents to invest, and I am glad to present 5 other talents as my gain. And then his Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. Now I set you as steward over many. Enter forthwith into the joy of your Lord. And then he who had received 2 talents came forward, saying, Lord, you delivered into my hands 2 talents. Behold, I have gained these other 2 talents. And his Lord then said to him, well done, good and faithful steward. You also have been faithful over a few things, and I will now set you over many. Enter into the joy of your Lord. And then there came to the accounting he who had received just 1 talent. This servant came forward saying, Lord, I knew you and realized that you were a shrewd man in that you expected gains where you had not personally labored. Therefore, I was afraid to ask aught of that which was entrusted to me. I safely hid your talent in the earth. Here it is, and now you have what belongs to you. But his Lord answered, you are an indolent and slothful steward. By your own words, you confess that you knew that I would require of you an accounting with reasonable profit, such as your diligent fellow servants have this day rendered. Knowing this, you ought therefore to have at least put my money into the hands of the bankers, that on my return might have received my own with interest. And then to the chief steward, this Lord said, take away this 1 talent from the unprofitable servant and give it to him who has the 10.
Okay, the next paragraphs expand on this, but I do want to say one thing before we go on to the next paragraphs, and that's this. We all have many different types of talents, right? Some of us are talented in being friends to people. Some of us are talented in being teachers. Some of us are talented in being listeners, you know. The talent I want to mention here is the talent of the Urantia Book, okay? If you think about it, we've been given a talent that's beyond human imagination, okay? And if we do not share this talent with others, are we doing justice to ourselves? Not really, right? So I wanted to make mention of that before we go on to the next paragraph. He goes on about this.
Roger.
Yeah. You back?
On that very word that you just said, it is said in the Urantia Book that we are to share the knowledge as soon as we learn it.
That's true. That is true.
So if you are in a group of people that refuse to listen to what you have to say, how are you going to share it?
That's one of those cases that you're trying to cast your pearls before swine, Bill. Remember the master said, do not cast your pearls before swines. If you run into a situation where no one wants to listen to what you have to say, shake off the dust off your feet and walk away. All right? That's what we're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. But whenever possible, we should try to share as much as we possibly can, right? And it's not always possible. You know, we have to be realistic too. You can't just go into some place you work and tell your boss, listen, you need to read this book, you know? He's going to fire you, you know? So that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Right.
So we have to use reason with it too, right?
Wisdom.
Wisdom. Okay. I think you're up, Bill.
Okay. To everyone who has, more shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him who has not, even that which he has shall be taken away. You cannot stand still in the affairs of the eternal kingdom. My Father requires all his children to grow in grace and in a knowledge of the truth. You who know these truths must yield the increase of the fruits of the Spirit and manifest a growing devotion to the unselfish service of your fellow servants. And remember that, inasmuch as you minister to one of the least of my brethren, you have done this service to me.
And remember, there's many, many types of service, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can do service in whatever profession you're in, right? All right.
Yeah.
And so should you go about the work of the Father's business, now and henceforth, even evermore, forevermore. Carry on until I come. In faithfulness, do that which is entrusted to you, and thereby shall you be ready for the reckoning call of death. And having thus lived for the glory of the Father and the satisfaction of the Son, you shall enter with joy and exceedingly great pleasure into the eternal service of the everlasting kingdom. That's a pretty good feeling to wake up in the mansion worlds knowing you've done everything you possibly could to bring about the kingdom of God, right? And that skipped over to
It's supposed to be 3:7.
Hmm?
It's supposed to be 3:7.
I know. I'm trying to get down here so I can find the error. Oh, we got 3:8 here. I skipped over 2 of them, didn't I?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. All right. Who's up next?
Stephen.
Huh?
Stephen.
No, Bill just read. So
Bill did? I'm
it
sorry.
would be you, dear, because I don't.
Okay. All right. Truth is living. The Spirit of truth is ever leading the children of light into new realms of spiritual reality and divine service. You are not given truth to crystallize into settled, safe, and honored forms. Your revelation of truth must be so enhanced by passing through your personal experience that new beauty and actual spiritual gains will be disclosed to all who behold your spiritual fruits, and in consequence thereof are led to glorify the Father who is in heaven. Only these faithful servants who thus grow in the knowledge of the truth and who thereby develop the capacity for divine appreciation of spiritual realities can ever hope to enter fully into the joy of their Lord. What a sorry sight for successive generations of professed followers of Jesus to say regarding their stewardship of divine truth. Here, Master, is the truth you committed to us 100 or 1,000 years ago. We have lost nothing. We have faithfully preserved all you gave us. We have allowed no changes to be made in fact, which you taught us. Here is the truth you gave us. But such a plea concerning spiritual indolence will not justify the barren steward of truth in the presence of the Master. In accordance with the truth committed to your hands, will the Master of truth require a reckoning?
Okay, I get to preach a whole gospel about this, right? This is the reason we study every day. Every day. You know, we learn our spiritual truths every single day. Now, you think about what's happened over the last 2,000 years. The Christian society has kept its little truth that it learned from the Master in a box and has literally left that truth exactly like it was when he left. Or which is not exactly true. It's exactly what he thought it was, perceived it to be when he left, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has not changed over 2,000 years. Why do you think the revelators thought it was time for us to have an expanded truth, the Urantia Book? Because we had not been good stewards of the truth, have we? We had not added to the truth. We had not.
Simpler. The truth is a lot simpler than what the New Testament has made it out to be.
That's right. It is much more simpler. You know, it all comes down to what? The sense. Fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, right? That's what it always comes back to. All right. And that is the one truth we seem to have lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Along the way.
That's why I was, had a discussion with a person on Facebook, and we were talking about what Paul has done to in Christianity, in that he had mixed the teachings of Jesus and then buried the essential teaching of Jesus into just a few things and made a whole new religion about the death of Jesus and the final sacrifice.
Yes, yeah. He just replaced Jesus' gospel with his own. Yeah, if you think about it, he just replaced Jesus' gospel with his own. That's what it happened, really. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen,
he did that to the Jews to which he was teaching.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We ready?
Yeah.
Okay. In the next world, you will be asked to give an account of the endowments and stewardships of this world, whether inherent talents are few or many. A just and merciful reckoning must be faced. If endowments are used only in selfish pursuits and no thought is bestowed upon the higher duty of obtaining increased yield of the fruits of the Spirit, as they are manifested in the ever-expanding service of men and the worship of God, such selfish stewards must accept the consequence of their deliberate choosing.
There's a reckoning coming, right? Sooner or later, there's a reckoning coming of what we've done. This is getting a little frustrating here. I'm sorry, y'all.
And I think being allowed to grow into an older age, really allows you that time to consider those things too.
I'm really locked up
We're
here.
on we should be on 3:09.
I'm trying to get there. Okay. Get some batteries for that next time.
Okay, come tomorrow.
Yeah. 383. Here we go.
Stephen's turn.
No, Stephen just read.
Oh, he did.
Millie, would you take this one?
Me?
Yes, please.
And how much like all selfish mortals was this unfaithful servant with the one talent, in that he blamed his slothfulness directly upon his Lord? How prone is man when he is confronted, when he is confronted with the failures of his own making, to put the blame on others, oftentimes upon those who least deserve it.
Well, we like to do that, don't we? Not take our own medicine, as they say. All right. Bill, are you still out there?
I'm here.
All right, you're next.
Yep. Said Jesus that night, as they went to their rest, freely have you received, therefore freely should you give of the truth of heaven. And in the giving will this truth multiply and show forth the increasing light of saving grace, even as you minister it.
Just remember, if you help one individual become a son or daughter of God, just one, that person could go out and change the world. And it could be from your action that the world has changed. Okay? So you never know when you talk to someone how this message will affect them. Right?
Right.
Let's see if I can.
It's just before 1.
Huh?
It's just before 1.
I'm sorry. I can't change this sitting down. Is that the right one?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I just left them. Sorry. Okay.
4, the return of Michael. All of the master's teaching, no one phase had been so misunderstood as his promise sometime to come back in person to this world. It is not strange that Michael should be interested in sometime returning to the planet whereon he experienced his seventh and last bestowal as the mortal of the realm. It is only natural to believe that Jesus of Nazareth, now sovereign ruler of a vast universe, would be interested in coming back not only once, but even many times to the world wherein he lived such a unique life and finally won for himself the Father's unlimited bestowal of universe power and authority. Urantia will eternally be one of the 7 nativity spheres of Michael in the winning of universe sovereignty. So we will always be a special place, right? Yeah. If I can get this back up again. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jesus did on numerous occasions and to many individuals declare his intention of returning to this world. As his followers awakened to the fact that their master was not going to function as a temporal deliverer, and as they listened to his predictions of the overthrow of Jerusalem and the downfall of the Jewish nation, they most naturally began to associate his promised return with these catastrophic events. But when the Roman armies leveled the walls of Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, and dispersed the Judean Jews, and still the Master did not reveal himself in power and glory, his followers began the formation of that belief which eventually associated the second coming of Christ with the end of the age, even with the end of the world.
So that's how it started, right? Stephen, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. Jesus promised to do 2 things after he had ascended to the Father. And after all power in heaven and on earth had been placed in his hands, he promised first to send into the world and in his stead another teacher, the Spirit of truth. And this he did on the day of Pentecost. Second, he most certainly promised his followers that he would sometime personally return to this world. But he did not say how, where, or when he would revisit this planet of this bestowal experience in the flesh. On one occasion, he intimated, that whereas the eye of the flesh had beheld him when he lived here in the flesh, on his return, at least on one of his possible visits, he would be discerned only by the eye of spiritual faith.
Only by the eye of spiritual faith. We were talking about this a little earlier tonight, right? Mm-hmm. So only those who are spiritually converted to sons and daughters of God would be able to see him, right? All right. Mm-hmm. Millie, would you take the next one, please?
Many of us are inclined to believe that Jesus will return to Urantia many times during the ages to come. We do not have his specific promise to make these plural visits, but it seems most probable that he who carries among his universe titles that of planetary prince of Urantia will many times visit the world whose conquest conferred such a unique title upon him.
So it just makes sense that he would come back, right? Even though Machiavellian Melchizedek is assigned as his vicegerent planetary prince, right? Mm-hmm. Here we go again.
Just a little test of patience.
It's a test of patience, that's right. I'll get this fixed before next time, y'all. Got the right one, 4, 5. All right. Bill, would you take the next one, please?
Sure. We most positively believe that Michael will again come in person to Urantia, but we have not the slightest idea as to when or in what manner he may choose to come. Will his second advent on earth be timed to occur in connection with the terminal judgment of this present age, either with or without the associated appearance of a Magisterial Son? Will he come in connection with the termination of some subsequent Urantian age? Will he come unannounced and as an isolated event? We do not know. Only one thing we are certain of, that is, when he does return, all the world will likely know about it, for he must come as the supreme ruler of the universe and not as the obscure babe of Bethlehem. But if every eye is to behold him, and if only spiritual eyes are to discern his presence, then must his advent be long deferred.
See why I'm saying it may be the age of light and life? Because if every eye has to behold him, but only spiritual eyes are to discern his presence, it may be when all have given in to the spiritual presence that we will actually see him, right?
Mm-hmm. See, that we may have Magisterial Sons and Trinity Teacher Sons come before he comes back.
That's right. That's right. We may. Okay. You would do well, therefore, to disassociate the Master's personal return to earth from any and all set events or settled epochs. Got that? We are sure only one thing. He has promised to come back. We have no idea as to when he will fulfill this promise or in what connection. As far as we know, he may appear on earth any day, and he may not come until age after age has passed and been duly adjudicated by his associated sons of the Paradise Core.
Yep. That's what we just said.
Yep. Pretty much sums it up, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I skipped over the last one up here. Let's just go ahead and read it. Yeah.
The second advent of Michael on earth is an event of tremendous sentimental value to both midwayers and humans, but otherwise it is of no immediate moment to midwayers and of no more practical importance to human beings than the common event of natural death, which so suddenly precipitates mortal man into the immediate grasp of that succession of universe events, which leads directly to the presence of this same Jesus, the sovereign ruler of our universe. The children of light are all destined to see him, and it is of no serious concern whether we go to him or whether he should chance first to come to us. Be you therefore ever ready to welcome him on earth, as he stands ready to welcome you in heaven. We confidently look for his glorious appearing, even for repeated comings, but we are wholly ignorant as to how, when, or in what connection he is destined to appear.
Okay, so it may be we won't see him till we get to paradise, to the mansion worlds, or we may see him before we die on this planet. We're just not really sure, right? All right, let's have a little prayer and we'll close for tonight. Stephen always asks you, always pass.
I'll pass.
All right. Bill, would you close us in prayer tonight? Thank you.
Okay. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time that we've had together in study of this, your latest revelation of yourself in this world. And Heavenly Father, we just ask and pray that you, give us each the teachings that we need to learn from this. As you know, from each of us what we need to learn from this. And we just thank you, Heavenly Father. We just thank you for Roger and Diane and how they worked hard to put this together and put this on the web and everything. And Heavenly Father, we just thank you that we are here to share and enjoy this teaching that you have made available for us. And we just thank you and we just ask and pray, Heavenly Father, that you watch over us and give those people that are in travail throughout the world and the Midwest and then throughout the rest of the world and travail with natural events that are hurting them, to give them strength and courage to carry on where they're at and rebuild themselves where they need to be. We just thank you and we pray these things in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
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 And thank you for joining us at home. I guess your stuff.